Ooh, that's kind of small. Yikes.
While Luocha has proven his worth in Honkai Star Rail, he still has the worst performing banner by far, him being the current best healer in the game, providing tons of utility on a mass scale that no one else can currently do, and resembling that of Jugram Hashwath. Why is he unwanted for most players across the board? What went wrong? Luocha being the first limited healer in Honkai Star Rail to have as low banner sales as he did isn't a thing that Hoyoverse is happy about. But there is many factors that come into play when it comes to the metrics behind Luocha's banner failure. Healers have always been a necessary part of most RPG games. They're essentially the supporters keeping the team relatively healthy, which in turn allows the damage carries to continue dishing out damage and the front line to continue mitigating damage for the team. While Genshin does a great job of allowing healers to exist in the current space of supporters in the team compositions, it's hard to say the same for Honkai Star Rail. Well, currently at least. I spent hours upon hours using healers in other RPG games, and the conclusion actually surprised me. The fundamental design behind Star Rail is the sole reason why healers currently are the least desirable characters, and as time goes on, the metrics will become even worse. One problem lies with Honkai Star Rail and the grouping of healers with shielders, and that group being called defensive options. For most players currently in the game, you only need 2 defensive options, and that's for the hardest content in the endgame, and for some players, you need none at all. One thing worth noting is that many players, myself included, hasn't even bothered with the Forgotten Hall Members of Chaos, because we're too busy staring at Rania to have ever gotten anything done. Or maybe that's just me. Well, anyways, it only makes sense given the demographic and casual audiences associated with the Hoyoverse games. When it comes to defensive options, most players just want something easily accessible that is able to get the job done, so a 4-star healer is more attractive than a limited 5-star healer, given the nature of the unforgiving gacha system. While on the topic of the gacha system, a 5-star to many players is a character that is worth on average a total of 160 rolls, and for many of those players, Luocha just isn't worth losing your guaranteed banner rate up over. Considering we're not entering the rerun phase of character banners anytime soon, most players won't have currency saved up for rolls because at least for now, we're getting new after new character thrown at us. I have to preface and say Luocha is an amazing character. Heck, he's so overloaded with his current kit that he lives up to the expectations of the other limited characters. Seal and Silverwolf, whom are at the top of their respective paths, but being right before the 2 most respected and anticipated characters of the Honkai Star Rail community also really doesn't do the Golden Boy any justice. You could say the situation sounds awfully familiar, but I personally wouldn't reach that far. Now, while Luocha does have amazing synergy with nearly every character, he works especially well with Blade, whom is the limited character to have his own rate-up banner after Luocha goes away, which again, doesn't do the guy any favors, as when both are presented on a silver platter, most players will just choose the damage dealer over the healer anyways. And taking into consideration how rare limited 5-star characters are, not many people are going to have spare Stellar J sitting around unless you are the luckiest free-to-play player in the world. It all just comes back to one thing after all, he's a healer. It's easy to understand why most people will skip said character when they already have defensive options, easier accessibility to other defensive options, and in healer just needing to do the bare minimum for their account, and that's just heal. Who am I kidding? If he was a waifu with blonde hair, his sales definitely would have doubled. And I can't say I wouldn't have been baited with those circumstances either. To think that this may be a Kokomi case is hard to tell. After all, she was received by the community just like Luocha in terms of banner metrics. Now later on, she's known to be a very valuable character in her respective team compositions, and does have a lot of utility for freeze teams, a big safety net for bloom teams, and is overall just a comfort character. But just like Luocha, she isn't needed, quote unquote. The perceived value will definitely change given time, and I'll go as far as to say that time is already ticking. We know corrosion is a mechanic that Hoyoverse has already introduced in the other game, and there will be a character that just straight up drains the life force of their allies, both of which will up the stonks of Luocha and other abundance characters. Now, while engaging in co-op activities, I soon realized the perceived value of healers to be increased exponentially. When you're playing with other players in the hardest contents the game has to offer, The room for error is higher as you can ensure everyone will be on the same skill level. But one thing's for sure, having a healer makes those environments manageable. Way more manageable. Star Rail not having any co-op activities means having a healer is even less necessary because as it stands currently for most players, you can't use the Bailu of a random player from within the game. Another reason I came to my conclusion is that Star Rail doesn't have any form of player versus player like most turn-based games. Which isn't a bad thing, it just only makes sense that defensive options would hold even less weight than they would had that content existed. A defense equal to an offense will always most of the time result in a defense winning, as that side can just use their mitigation and sustain to stall out matches entirely. Had this form of content existed in the current game, you would definitely see an uptick in the sales of this character due to the nature of his cleansing utility and passive healing. Luocha, while being an XP of someone in a different game in a different universe, may also break the immersion for some players that are diehard fans of the Honkai Impact universe. But then again, having a playable Welt changes everything. While Luocha does have a lot to provide in the team setting, it's hard to still justify the amount of roles it would take to pull the character. If you're like me, of course, and don't have the best RNG. Characters like Bailu is accessible for everyone at some point. You may lose your 50-50 and get this character while you're trying to go for a different limited character. A good portion of players already have the character at this point in the game, and that number will continue to increase as we reach further into the game's life cycle. Now, while both have their own nuisances, a character like Bailu is still more of a safety net and auto-friendly when compared to Luocha. Enemies can one-shot you in the hardest contents, and Bailu can come in clutch with her revives. The synergy Luocha currently shows with Blade is a good thing. It seems he'll work very well with the current destruction characters, as well as upcoming ones especially. And something tells me, through the grapevine of course, that Den Heng Imbibitor Lunae will be his best friend, so that definitely will prove his worth even more. But only time will tell if this stands true. Being skill point positive and imaginary does help the character in many ways. Going forward, I believe Hoyoverse will find it in their best interest to probably shape the current contents or add different contents to have healers and cleansers to be more valuable as a defensive option. Making sure an abundance character is not squashed between two of the most anticipated characters in Star Rail, and or design upcoming casts as waifu bait, because who honestly can't resist a cute healer? So there you have it. Going forward for the future of Star Rail, I believe that Hoyoverse will definitely sell you a lot less abundance characters. So think of these characters to come very few and far in between. That is, well, with the current roster of characters and the current characters we're getting in the near future, we'll probably get a lot of healers in the form of 4 stars, 5 stars every now and then we're going to get a lot of DPS characters. Because from where it stands currently, DPS characters make Hoyoverse the most money. And of course, well, money talks. So Hoyoverse will find in their best interest to go where the money is. So don't be surprised if you see a lot more DPS characters and very few healer characters. That's just how the game goes. Twitch.tv/Toshio, the link will be in the description. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and have a nice rest of your day. Peace.